Good morning. Good morning. Is that, I have this microphone on. Oh, do I have no? I think it's mine to the hall here. Not get a signal out to Zoom. Well, there's a moment for that. Always useful teaching from Ruth Dennis. Are you waiting? Once you have I was the one sort of yodeling in a it's the valley, the village to which Hannibal brought himself, and they didn't. Most of them didn't make it down. Very difficult spot. But anyway, I was out practicing my yodeling at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the police thought this was odd, and there had been a burglary nearby. So I finally convinced them that I was. Are we getting a signal out? Well, let me look. Let me look at. Oh, every time you go, so getting my voice into the. Where's it picking it up the second? Where's it picking up the second? I'm going to try this. Well, that won't. Well, it's off. It's off. Perhaps that's what. There's no incoming. There's no. We're not sitting in the ICU. Child. Still at the left. Great ball. There is a chance. The company that could create for us a system that would be like 3 quicker. However, it took out. Right now, Paul. This is a test of the Buddha breath. If you try, this is a movement in the direction of real. We like to think that meditation is something we do, and we get into a special open state, and it feels really good. And our worries are at a distance, problem. You know, we want the wandering thinking mind. We want the disturbing activities of a partner, child. We don't want to just get away from it. And that's a natural and perhaps worthy thing. It's just one piece of the practice. My daughter had a heavy pack, and I was 50 something, 55. My body was a little, and I slipped on a little bit of dirt, a little bit of mud that was about from here to the stairs. And we've been doing the plunge step an hour or two down the slope. But then there's this little step, and then my foot caught on a rock, and my quadriceps tendon tore off my leg. The whole thing did that. And there was a helicopter rescue that was very. I had to ride in an armed Black Hawk. When they have you in that thing, and then they zip you up, it's not shaky at all. It's like there's a mountain park over it, and you go, just amazing. Anyway, they got me in, and I got home. And it was a wonderful rescue, very loving. And then I went to see the surgeon, Scott, and he told me it hurts a little bit now. After the surgery, it's really going to hurt. And it did. And I was home, and I was poorly medicated, inappropriate. I had allergies to the meds I didn't know. But the point of why I'm saying all this, can we do it, do you think? Or oh, okay. I could just, yeah, turn it off or just close it. Why don't I kill it? I mean, goodbye. Waiting for the purple flash. You're left hanging with my story. What's going to happen? Why is this not working, Paul? Oh, there goes the purple flash. So I was pretty adept at working with pain. Take the awareness, bring the awareness. You can't get away from the pain. Turn toward it, go in. And I was going in, and I'm ready for the relief and the acceptance and the non-resistance. And it just isn't coming. And there's just this pain, and it's the middle of the night, and I can't take any more pain meds. And what shall I do? And then I remembered Tonglen meditation, right? Thinking of all the other people in the world with this kind of pain and breathing that into the heart and breathing out. And then I'm ready for the relief, and there's no relief. It's just pain. And it makes me sad to think of it, actually. It's just pain. And and you can only listen to the BBC News 10 times before it's completely boring. And music was totally unengaging. So there's just this pain in my knee. And I discovered a practice that really helped. And it was the practice of, oh, working? Huh. This is suffering humanity. You recording? Good to go? We'll get rid of this beast. Goodbye. Thank you for sharing. This is suffering humanity. Have you had that experience? When someone left you, or they died, or some dream you'd been planning on for decades, maybe, just, what do we do? We could resort to alcohol. Could and do and have, probably. Many of us in this room. We could use various forms of intoxication. We could get angry. We could start taking it out on our loved ones. We could start hurting ourselves. We could become suicidal. I've never done this before. Please raise your hand if you've ever been really quite suicidal. Look around, my friends. Right? That's close to the brink. The pain has to get really bad. And this isn't a new phenomenon. This is the human condition. The human mind is no different today than it was in the time of the Buddha. We're not debating any new things. We're not having anything new politically. It's always been like this. And so Siddhartha, faced with this, set off on a quest. And his quest was to go inward, what he discovered. And that there was, in fact, something he could do to relieve himself from this pain of the human condition. And that's what we're doing here today. And I've been finding myself having a conversation often, well, relatively often. I was talking to my son the other day, who's 41. He's been around me this 41 years. And I forget how it came up, but I said to him, you know, I don't teach religion. I'm not a religious person. It was very interesting. Because this isn't religion. This is the Dharma. This is an exploration of consciousness and suffering and joy and love and compassion that is unique to each of us, and it requires no belief. There's a little belief at the beginning, like, maybe this will help. Give it a try. Why don't you try it and borrow a little faith and try it and see. But fortunately, the results are so quick. One starts having some experiences that lead to faith. And not faith in, I believe in something that somebody told me to believe, but faith in, my goodness, this works. So all of that said, and I'm sorry we can't have that cute little movie. It was a lovely song. Well, are we on YouTube now? Okay, I won't play the song. If we put a commercial song on YouTube, they won't broadcast it. And another time. So we're here. We could find a comfortable upright posture. There's a lot of magical thinking about sitting cross-legged. Some traditions say there's no way you can awaken without sitting cross-legged. Does that not seem a little fundamentalist to you? Some people sit cross-legged easily and it's really solid. I used to. Getting helicoptered out of the mountains made that a little more difficult. But sitting comfortably upright, and you can let your eyes be open or closed. And notice that you're alive. Notice that your body makes contact with the cushion or the chair. Notice that it breathes. It's quite something, isn't it? It breathes. I've been present at a few human deaths. And I've sat with the body for a while, sometimes a long while. There's a really fascinating experience that happens. You'll be sitting there and just quiet, and then you'll see the body breathe. And then you look again, it's not. But then you kind of soften your gaze and it breathes again. And it's a perceptual hallucination because bodies always breathe, except when they don't. But right now, your body is breathing all by itself. The first meditative teaching the Buddha taught was called mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. And so we bring awareness to the beginning of each breath. And we stay with the breath if we can, all the way through rising to fullness, declining, and vanishing. It's quite likely that something else happens, though, isn't it? The mind tends to wander. It creates fantasies, past and future. It tells stories. It erupts into emotions. It becomes enamored of some desire subtle or not so subtle. Wanting, or not wanting, disliking, pushing against. It sometimes is restless and agitated, unstable. Or it gets sleepy and dull, uninterested. Or maybe it gets caught up in doubt. I don't know that I want to do this, or I don't think it works. Was the Buddha real anyway? Are these teachings really functional? The primary antidote to all of these is simply to wake up. To notice, oh, this is breathing in. This is breathing out. This is the wandering mind. This is mindfulness awakening to the wandering mind. This is coming home to breathing. We can attend to the sensations of breathing in the chest and abdomen, or also at the nostrils, sensations of coming and going. We can also include more in the field of observation. We could include, for instance, the hands and the arms. They're alive too. The hands and the arms and the legs, the pelvis, the feet, that's alive too. So the breathing exists in the context of now the head and face as well, the back, the fingers. We cultivate and allow a certain kind of curiosity. It's like, what's going on? At the beginning, we think of meditation as a special activity. And gradually we discover that it's really just the natural waking up. It's not that it's not special, it's actually revolutionary. It's the destination of the human endeavor. But there's nothing fancy to it. It's just remembering, oh, right, the mind is wandering. Or, oh, this is in-breathing and out-breathing. Look at this. This is worrying. This is self-hatred. This is obsession. And so we come home to something very simple, in-breathing and out-breathing. Is there perhaps in the background a sense of meditating to get somewhere? I'm going to meditate and improve my character. Or I'm going to meditate and never feel frightened again. Or if anything like that happens, those are worthy thoughts to observe. There is a tyranny much worse than anywhere on the planet. Whenever we take our thoughts as real, whenever we create a self out of our thoughts, we are imprisoned in a time-bound body. We're fated to believe that our personality is who we are. And so we follow the ancient way of the Buddha, awakening in the middle of one wandering mind after another. Coming home to the simplicity of this breathing in and this breathing out. Each breath has a beginning, a lifetime, and then an ending. So does each thought. This is the truth of anicca, impermanence. It's true of everything. This practice, Satipatthana Vipassana, the practice of mindfully observing the true nature of things, things as they are, is based in a certain worldview or reveals a certain worldview. In that worldview, it's possible to wake up. In fact, awakening is our nature. And in that practice, one examines the human condition absolutely thoroughly. We study the body, we study the feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and indeterminate. We become aware of the various mental states, the whole of the personality as it unwinds itself, and all kinds of mental phenomena, perception, hearing, moods. And it's with a question. Is anything here enduring? Does anything last? Is there anything really worth trying to hold on to? Does suffering come every time I hold on to something? There's another strategy, which is part of waking up, which is to acknowledge that there is the experience of a separate self here. Notice how real you seem to yourself, your story, your physical experience. And you've probably noticed that life is pretty darn hard. One of the great wonders is that we don't love ourselves profoundly. Somehow or another, we find fault. And so there's another strategy, which is to reflect on loving yourself, to reflect on loving each other, reflect on loving all beings. So I invite you to try on a few simple phrases like, I really long to be happy. May I be happy. I really long to be free from suffering, from anxiety, fear. May that be the case. May I be free from suffering. May I live with ease and grace. May my life be gracious, easy. May my relationships go well. May my life become one great sigh of gratitude. Now, these are words. There's an intention beneath them, which is the most important. And there's another vehicle that I like a lot, which is the simple phrase, I love you, with your name at the end. Try it out. Maybe let a little smile come to your lips. I love you, with your name. And notice if this is difficult, which is fascinating information if it's true. Where could you have learned an attitude in which you don't really love yourself? That's obviously learned somewhere. And we have the capacity of visualizing. One beautiful visualization is to imagine that you're holding a baby, or maybe it's your favorite cat or dog. And it could be that the baby is yourself. What would you say to that baby? What would you want them to know? Really know? You know, things like you're safe. I'll always be with you. You don't have to take care of me. I'll take care of you. You are exactly what and who I have always been hoping for. And there's a beautiful lullaby that I learned from Gina Salah in this hall. I've never tried to lead it before, but somehow it seems like the right moment. So I'm going to try to sing it. Sing it. And if you want to join in, you can join in. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love. One more time. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love again, actually. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love. And one more time, Ruth, you're singing this to yourself, your most vulnerable self. Lie back in the arms of love. Rest back in the arms of love. Lie back in the arms. You are safe from harm. Lie back in the arms of love. Feeling the life in your body. You're one of a kind ever in the universe body. There are hundreds of billions of galaxies. There's never been and never will be another you. Rest back into the awesome nature of that, of your awesome nature. Of course, you have a neurotic personality. That's how they are. Of course, you struggle in all kinds of ways in your life. That's how lives are. And so cherishing this aliveness, which is here, this awareness of aliveness, notice that, awareness. What a remarkable thing. Hearing, no distractions. How could there be a distraction in life? And please now, let's conjure up another thought. Oh, what the heck? Why not another image as well as a thought? Imagine that your body is glowing with love and light. Maybe this love and light are coming from a little tiny Buddha sitting in the center of your heart, or a Kuan Yin. Or maybe there's a pinhole at the center of your heart through which all the love in the universe can pour. And let your body become a radiator of love and compassion. Fill this room, fill your living room at home, wherever you're practicing. Don't hold back. It's not personal. And let it extend now to fill this room. To include your family and friends. And in fact, why not go for broke? We'll just include all beings. From the tiny monkeys deep in the jungle in Africa to the great whales, to all humans in all human conditions. And please now let us become aware of the body where it touches the chair, And notice the hands and arms, chest and neck and jaw and cheeks and eyes. Notice the eyes. And notice the planning of an intention to open the eyes. But let's not open them without something extra, which is, let's open with eyes of blessing, with a thought of, may you be happy or free from fear, or maybe simply, I see you. And then, to the degree that it's comfortable, here in the hall, let your eyes open. Notice the mystery of seeing. And then again, to the degree that it feels okay to you, turn around, look around. Notice seeing and the meeting of eyes. It always feels safer to meet eyes when there's a thought inside, which is, may you be really happy. May your relationships go really well. May you always have enough to eat. May you be healthy. And notice how it is to be on the receiving end, right? When someone looks at you and you can be pretty sure they're not thinking something critical. They're thinking, wow, I hope you feel really safe in your life. I hope you get medical care when you need it. And a long time ago, 40 years maybe, I was invited to the West Coast. Ooh, teary. I was invited to the first West Coast Dharma teachers meeting. There were 13 of us. Ruth Dennison, my teacher, had invited me, and it was a gathering of the luminaries. Jack Kornfield was there, and Sylvia Boorstein, and wonderful people. We took a day and a half for each of us to tell our story in depth of how we came to the Dharma. It was wild, amazing stories. I just remembered one thing now that Jack Kornfield talked about. What's the purpose of the Dharma, of practicing the Dharma? It's to live well and to die well. That's it. It's quite a blessing, isn't it? I mean, I guess you don't do it in proper company, but to say, I hope you have a fine death. Right? And I hope you prepare, because that's how to have a fine death. Hope you keep it in mind a lot. I didn't ask her permission, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our dear Dharma sister Christine, her mother died 2 days ago. They'd been sitting vigil for a week and a bit. And she was, we say she was old. She was 95 or so, very bright person. I got to know her well years ago. How many of you know someone who's grieving a recent loss? Take a look around. Happens a lot. So candle would you be willing to come up here and talk to me for a moment and then make an announcement or two? So what we're going to do, we're going to have a little bit of announcements, and then Jim will lead some movement, and then I have a Dharma talk prepared for you, for us. But please hang on and listen to Candle first, and then maybe, I think maybe stand. You can zoom in on her. Marvelous human being.
Hello, friends. Good to see you all. I'm going to set this down and tell you about it in a minute. Okay, let me compose myself. After such a nice meditation, I have to engage the rest of my brain too. It's easy, though, to do this part, and that's to welcome everyone here. That we like to welcome everyone. We study together and practice for the benefit of all beings and this living earth. And we recognize the suffering that's caused by biases, prejudices, and systems of power and privilege, and oppression that's based on race and sex, class and age, ethnicity, religion, national origin and ability, sexual orientation, and gender identity or expression. And we aspire to do no harm and to dismantle barriers that cause separation and suffering, recognizing that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And it's also really important that we acknowledge the land that we are seated on, that this community here, PIMC in Portland, recognizing the place that we gather, that it's ancestral land. And those of you that are on Zoom, wherever you may be seated, I know there are many of you from far away, but here in the Portland area are the Clackamas, the Cowlitz, the 7 tribes of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, which happens to be, I think, the 9th largest urban grouping of indigenous peoples in the country. And there are also the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz peoples. And so we respectfully acknowledge all of the indigenous communities in the past and the present and in the future. And we acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide and relocation and assimilation that still has impact on many of the indigenous families today. And so may we all recognize the inherent worthiness, and may healing and reconciliation come to those who need it most. And it's also important to acknowledge the other Asian immigrants in the 19th century that came here to America and began arriving in the New World. They brought us the Dharma here first, entering from China in the 1820s, and then larger numbers came in the 1850s for the gold rush. And that the immigrant Buddhist congregations in North America are diverse, and they're as different as the peoples of the Asian Buddhist countries. And so settling here, and in Portland, we have a very large community of Buddhists, Sri Lankan Buddhists, Chinese Buddhists, Japanese Buddhists, Korean Buddhists, Thai Buddhists, Cambodian, Vietnamese, And so all of these have contributed, and we have the privilege in our lineage of those who have come from Vietnam and the Theravadan practicing countries of Southeast Asia. And so it seems important to me that we reckon with these perplexities and the perversities of Americans' racial karma, and that we're guided by countless ancestors that are named and unnamed. And when we die, we too want to become ancestors. So may we conduct our lives in ways that merit the veneration of our descendants. May we be fortunate enough to have these future generations recite our names. Thank you for listening to this because it's important.
Can I add a little piece? I don't need that. I think if we're doing this kind of clear acknowledgement, wow. The fact that our country, like so many actually, was based in the importation of slaves, and that hundreds of thousands of people lived in slavery in America, and that the structures, political, legal, financial, are still that keep African American people subdued and having less power. The structures are still monumental. One thing that I learned was, the GI Bill sent a lot of people to college. Well, almost no black people. Less than 7% of the black people who served in World War II succeeded in using the GI Bill because of the resistances, the obstacles. So this kind of acknowledgement isn't about creating guilt. It's not about creating guilt, because the racists, please, please raise your hand if you feel, if you can acknowledge in yourself how remarkably racist you are, right? Because it's natural for human beings to be racist. It's not wholesome. It's awful. But if you're born in the wrong womb, you happen to be subjugated, or if you're born in the wrong womb, you happen to be a subjugator. And so that's where the Dharma is so incredibly invaluable for us, because we can face our own, the way the roots of racism and violence are in each of us. And so we can't then project, those are the bad people, those are the racists over there. They're just people. We're all just people, and we're all doing our very best, given the degrees of ignorance that we have. There's this Buddhist character, Mara, who's kind of the Buddhist Satan figure. And Mara raises its head all the time in us with our various prejudices, because they're built in. So the land acknowledgement and it's really not about, if it provokes guilt, it's useless. It's worse than useless. It's really harmful. But does it provoke awareness, and does it help us then decide, I don't want to do that. I want to intervene when I can, and I want to contribute time, energy, resources to not have this persist. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. It leads me right into the gratitude that I have for everyone who has joined us in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, race, and inclusion discussion group that we started using Larry Yang's book, Awakening Together. So thank you for those who have joined. We've had our first session. Our second one is on Tuesday. There might be still a possibility that the registration is open through to this second class. So if you look on the website, hopefully you might be able to join in if you're still at all interested. And so the other couple of things I wanted to announce was just a few upcoming opportunities to study with Jim. He does a Qigong retreat on February 18th. So that's coming up in a few weeks. And then also, thank you to those women and non-binary folks who have joined the Women's Restoration and Rejuvenation. We've had our first one this last Friday. And you can still also join into it if you'd like to. It's the third Friday of each month, and we go 4 months at a time. It's also on the website. And then Doug Pullen is going to be starting Basics of Mindfulness, which he does at least once a year, maybe more often, but anyway, once a year. So if you are wondering more about mindfulness and want to have the basis of the understanding of the practices as in the Buddha Dharma, that will be opening up February 16th. So it's a great opportunity. You might even suggest it to some of your friends. And then one last thing, and I don't know if you have anything else, but one last thing I wanted to let you know was that it's going to look like this. It will be on the bulletin board right here, and it gives you the link to the YouTube channel that we have that has our Sundays here and the other evening classes. Who missed one or wanted to hear someone else's class, they will be listed on this YouTube. It's PIMC, it's Portland Insight Meditation Center on their YouTube channel. And there's a QRL here. You can take a picture of it, have it on your phone if you want to check in. And also down below is a QR code for Dana for the center. So in case you didn't bring your wallets or don't go online that often to look at the website, but you want to have a QR for donation of generosity for the gift economy, you'll find a QR code on the bulletin board. So
Very slick.
I think you've heard enough of me. Thank you, everyone.
This is a case of Kendall getting things done. We just decided yesterday to do this meeting we had, so pretty flash. I have another final announcement. A lot of announcements, huh? It's a good thing they're so interesting. March 8th. This isn't advertised yet at all. I just finally got it together yesterday. March 8th will be the first Wednesday night of a 13-week class on the 4 foundations of mindfulness using Joseph Goldstein's book. Marvelous. It's a classic of our time. And the teachers of the teacher trainee training group will be mentoring that, and anyone who participates in the class will have a teacher mentor and have the opportunity, it's not required, but to check in once a week and to maybe write a one-page summary of what you learned or where the practice. So it's going to be a wonderfully engaging and powerful class in mindfulness. Well, how you doing? Are you awake? Mr. Dalton, are you awake? And still capable of standing and moving. So Jim's going to do a little bit of mindful movement, and then there will be more about the Dharma from me. Uh-oh. Let's do this. Hmm. How am I doing, Paul? The other side? Okay. Now I'm communicating with the Zoom people. You can't see them, but I can't see them, but something's happening over there. Oh, so we're there. All right, here we go. So we're standing, feeling the balance, feeling the resting of the standing body. There's a certain little ritual that I learned from the Asian traditions of Qigong, where it's, I don't know what it's called in Chinese, but it's spacious standing. I let my elbows move out away from the rib cage and the torso. So there's space around us, space between our arms and our rib cage, and then simple standing involves moving the rib cage naturally, easily open to the side, to the back, to the front. We often say, the first instruction in mindful practice is, rising and falling. Let the ribs rise and fall. But they can't rise and fall without everything in the rib cage system expanding into space, contracting. And there's no conflict, there's no dispute of boundaries. The boundaries change. And then they change again. It feels like this, resting in the breath, in the spacious standing. And if we begin some of the basic Qigong exercises, gestures that are thousands and thousands of years old, we're joining a whole multi-generational cadre, just down from generation to generation, reaching across and releasing, reaching across. The entire body gets involved in changing the weight, changing the position, changing the breathing a little bit. We're putting in a little bit of effort to rise. But let's pause, feeling this body in space. Feel the boundary of the body, and the space is not disputing that boundary. It accepts it. Then we release, and there's a new boundary. No negotiations, no treaties, just moving on into the dance of life, reaching up, stopping to pause and breathe. Do we hold our breath? No. We allow the breath its impulse to expand the lungs and lift the spirit, and then we release and notice the changing position, the changing feeling. With all the new research in brain neurobiology, there's interoception. We know when our boundaries are cooperating with the space in spacious standing. It feels like this. We know when the teacher says, turn and gaze at the moon, as soon as the gesture starts and you perceive it, there's interoception. You move your body until you feel like that image of the teacher looks. There's a matching between your feeling of your body and your perception of someone suggesting something. It's not forcing. You've created new boundaries, and the space has accepted those new boundaries. And then you release, and you come back to that familiar spot where you're balanced, poised, and it feels like this. There's sensations, there's feelings of release, and you can feel gravity drawing the arms down from the shoulder sockets. But then, oh, I was doing gazing at the moon. That's right. I remember. It's like this. Now the shoulder sockets have completely different sensations. The interoception. What's happening in the gut? What's happening in the bottom of the right foot? What's happening in the left hip? All sorts of events are firing off in the nervous system. And we're not attached to them. And it's not a boundary that has to be respected forever. It's released effortlessly. Wouldn't it be nice if the rest of the day was like this? Lifting, not holding, just pausing and then releasing. We're playing a role, we're engaged in lifting, we're playing a new role, releasing slowly, enjoying every change. Do you enjoy every change that arises during the day? I don't. I'm resisting them all the time. But every once in a while, I remember, oh, this is what it's like to not resist, just go with the flow. It's a harmful or a harmless memory that I re-engage and then make it a prayer. Could I embrace every event, every experience with the same openness, the same willingness to make a new boundary, make a new role, and don't worry about what you're leaving behind. Embracing openness. Establishing a new boundary up here. Painting a rainbow. You have an image of paintbrushes at the end of your arms. All kinds of beautiful colors. But that takes a lot of effort. Why don't we just feel like this? The image may help you remember this tomorrow morning when you feel like stretching when you get out of bed. But it's a memory device. It's not a thing. It's just a helpful tool. Painting a rainbow feels like this, and then we don't attach to it, we release. And we have new boundaries, spacious, standing. And then I like to move in a circle and gather all the memories of the last 10 minutes into a pleasant memory of integration, gathering from space, bringing it into the space inside this nervous system. And it'll be there again when I remember it as a harmless, pleasant engagement with space. Hopefully I'll remember it tomorrow when I'm driving, when I'm sitting in front of the computer, eating my lunch. Remember the ease of breathing in a living organism. Is breathing and aware of it.
spacious standing, and spacious gratitude. Thank you. And I'll see you on the 18th of February here if you'd be interested in pursuing other Qigong and meditation practices from 9 to 1, the 18th.
Oh, it's not on there. It's on here. How you doing? Hmm. I have a remarkable poem to share with you this morning by Ellen Bass. She can write some potent poetry. I'd like to also thank Paul for doing the broadcasting. Yay. Thank you. So you ready for the poem? It's a bit of a waker upper. It's very Buddhist, I guess. The first line is, anyway, bad things are going to happen. In fact, that's the whole poem. Bad things are going to happen. How are you going to deal with them? But it does go on. Bad things are going to happen. Your tomatoes will grow a fungus, and your cat will get run over. Someone will leave the bag with the ice cream melting in the car and throw your blue cashmere sweater in the dryer. Your husband will sleep with a girl your daughter's age, her breasts spilling out of her blouse. Or your wife will remember she's a lesbian and leave you for the woman next door. The other cat, the one you never really liked, will contract a disease that requires you to pry open his feverish mouth every 4 hours. Your parents will die. No matter how many vitamins you take, how much Pilates you do, you'll lose your keys, your hair, and your memory. If your daughter doesn't plug her heart into every live socket she passes, you'll come home to find your son has emptied the refrigerator, dragged it to the curb, and called the used appliance store for a pickup for drug money. There's a Buddhist story of a woman chased by a tiger. When she comes to a cliff, she sees a sturdy vine and climbs halfway down. But now there's also a tiger below. And two mice, one white and one black, scurry out and begin to gnaw at the top of the vine. At this point, she notices a wild strawberry growing from a crevice. She looks up, down at the mice. Then she eats the strawberry. So here's the view, the breeze, the pulse in your throat. Your wallet will be stolen. You'll get fat. Slip on the bathroom tiles of a foreign hotel and crack your hip. You'll be lonely. Oh, taste how sweet and tart the red juice is, how the tiny seeds crunch between your teeth. If I could easily pull it up and wouldn't get into copyright problems, I'd like to play a few bars from what's become my favorite song. It's Florence and the Machine's song, Free. There's 4 lines very near the end. Just kind of all for me, it all prepares, gets ready for those 4 lines. And then she says so exquisitely, "Is this how it is? Is this how it's always been? To exist in the face of suffering and death and still keep singing?" Wow. Life isn't at all like I thought. You know, I was so idealistic. Oh my goodness, which meant lost in thought. Idealistic. I really believed that my generation, going to high school in the 60s, I really thought we would end war. I did. Even though we didn't do duck and cover, I was in Canada, but even though I grew up with really the expectation that I wouldn't grow old because of nuclear war, that was deeply. It actually was complicated because I grew up my parents were fine parents and they also had serious problems. And my father was alcoholic and got worse as time went on, and he drove drunk all the time. And we always expected that he wouldn't come home sometime, that would happen. Never did, amazingly. But that anxiety came together with the fear of a nuclear holocaust. And so anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure how we're going to end war and hunger and suffering. But I really thought that would be our success. And it turns out we didn't quite make it. But I did discover that there is in fact a path. There is in fact a way to bring much more love and happiness and connection and the ability to, we don't need a strawberry, the ability to reach out and pick up a rose and be flabbergasted. Good word, huh? Flabbergasted. I mean, look at these things. these roses quite possibly flew on a plane from South or Central America to be here. What a thing. So there is something I want to say. I've kind of given up on stopping war. I think I've kind of given up on stopping climate change. I've come a long ways in giving up on the fantasy that I will live forever. Here's an interesting one. I really thought I would resolve all my conflict with everybody before I died. And it turns out that the longer I live, particularly in this role, which is kind of like a lightning rod, but there are people that I will never reconcile with. I can reconcile with them in myself, so it's no longer, I can let go of my end of whatever it was. But there's some wreckage that's gone past. But what is it that I'm really trying to say? I think it's quite possible. In fact, I'm very convinced of this, that we can live in much greater happiness and contentment and ease than we even imagine when we set out. So I think I want to speak specifically about the emotional upsetness in our lives. Please raise your hand if you experience some struggle with emotions. It's a very funny YouTube piece with Bob Newhart and the woman who comes in to see him, and he's a psychiatrist of sorts, a mental health person. She comes in and it's quite funny. She tells him her problem, and her problem is that she's afraid she's going to be buried alive in a box. And his solution is very quick. It's just 2 words. I'll say these 2 words, you repeat them after me, and then we'll be done. And so she tries to talk about her parents, and no, we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do this. And then he said, stop it. Just stop it. And she says, but I can't. No, stop it. Stop it. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box. He says. It's worth it. Just look up Bob Newhart. Stop it. Doesn't work, does it? Stopping it doesn't work. And there's lots of things that don't work. My iPad's going to die. I think I don't need it. What doesn't work? We try a lot of things. Satisfying all our desires. Our culture is based on a lie, which is that if we get enough stuff, if we get enough positive experience, we'll be happy. And the desperate unhappiness of some of the multi-billionaires proves that to be wrong. It is true that up to a certain point, there's pretty strong research on this, up to something like $60,000 or $70,000 a year, income makes a huge difference to experience happiness. But after that, it hardly makes any difference at all, because that means the basic needs are taken care of. But happiness, of course, doesn't come from that. So that's one form of avoidance. There's the other forms, profound forms of avoidance, which we have in all of our different forms of intoxication. Right? And intoxication is normative in all cultures, actually. All that I know of, anyway. In fact, there's a great book if you deal with addictive issues at all, which of course we all do. It's called The Natural Mind by health food guru Andrew Weil, right? Andrew Weil doesn't let on, because now he's a big bearded health food guru, that before he got into that racket, he was one of the world's most experienced people on psychotropic medications, and went all over the world studying with shamans and so on. And he knew and knows a lot about that kind of thing. And one of the things he says in that book, the core thing is, we need altered states. We desperately need altered states, because ordinary reality sucks. That's not a popular thing to say, but it's true, isn't it? The Buddha said dukkha, and there's dukkha. And I not so long ago had a really deep realization that's persisting. There's a whole setup to how it came about. I'm driving along a road. It's a gravel road. I'm in my friend's car. It's the end of a retreat up in Canada. I'm going to visit my friend who's dying. And he's been dying for several years of cancer, but he's really on his way out soon. And I'm driving along, and it suddenly strikes me. We never get to stop anywhere. We never get to stop. Our whole lifetime, we never arrive anywhere. I mean, we never arrive anywhere that we're not already departing. It's like, when do I get to rest? When do I get to stop somewhere? And it just doesn't happen. And that's not pleasant. That's dukkha. There's a parallel view of that, is that if you were to imagine, it's kind of silly, but if you were to imagine that you are at the receiving end of a conveyor belt, and behind that conveyor belt is the biggest Amazon fulfillment center you've ever, it's the whole world. It's the whole karmic history of you and all of the beings. And the packages are coming on that line, and they come fast. Some of them are small, some of them are big. They all have an address on them. And your job is to take it and send it in the direction of its destination. So the vipaka, the karmic reality of this moment in your life is now. How will you respond to it? Right? That's the law of karma. And here it comes, just like, we get to sleep at night a little bit. It's like, but the packages pile up. They're waiting for us in the morning, and their packages, some of them are mood, some of them are responsibility, some of them are relationship. Some of us are so crazy that we actually have children. And then we really have packages, right? So, no offense to my children. So, not to go too far afield on that. At some point, if we're really lucky, something happens that is sufficient that it kind of self-destructs, at least it dents heavily, our preferred go-to strategies for being satisfied. And we realize, it just isn't happening. Right? Maybe another gourmet dinner, maybe another relationship, maybe another career, maybe some activism, maybe something's going to get me to that place where I realize, oh, I finally arrived. And then Ellen Bass's poem comes along. So maybe we walk in this door, and then we run into the notion that what we've been perceiving last summer, sitting in my backyard, looking up into the Douglas fir tree, this reverie was happening, and I was looking back over my life, and I've had such a remarkable life. I mean, the things I've had the opportunity, I worked on ships and ski patrol in Switzerland and overland to India and cowboy in Australia. I mean, what a life, right? It's incredible. But there's always been something wrong. Always. It struck me. Well, as my kids would say, well, duh, Robert. There's always something wrong. There's always a leak. Ruth Dennison's term for dukkha. There's always a leak in the canoe. My life has always had something wrong with it. And I can focus there and really look back and think, man, it's been really hard for me. Or I can realize that's just the nature of the thing. And there's been incredible beauty and love and pleasure and so on. So we walk in these doors, and then we run into a teaching that says, there's nothing wrong with you or the way you've lived your life in that way. It's just that that's the nature of life. And there's something more. And the something more might be turn inward. Develop a mind that can have some particular skills. One of them is concentration. And we can develop a much more concentrated mind over weeks, months, years. And we can develop a mind in which we can intentionally notice, oh, there's a lot of anxiety. This is just not working. A more serious intervention. Maybe I can sit down and come home to my breath and just suppress that. And we can learn to do that. And it's really helpful. Many of us do it in our work. I know I've had these dual roles, sort of a Dharma teacher and psychotherapist. I've met with tens of thousands of people, I guess, over the years. And the number of times when I've gone into my office and it's like, what am I doing here? My life's a mess. And then someone walks in, or they're in the waiting room, and I think, oh man, how can I possibly talk to this person? And then they walk in, and that poor me, exhausted, freaked out Robert is gone. And there's me. There's this capacity of being present for the suffering of another person. And you all do that. You can do that. You've done it with your partners. You do it with children ad nauseum. I mean, that's the job of the small child is to say, oh, mommy, daddy, oh, you're really tired and hurting, aren't you? You have needs? Well, tough shit. Right? Because my needs, I almost use that word that starts with a T. My needs are superior to yours. It's a shame when a word becomes impossible to use. So we can learn to, concentration is really helpful, and it's developable. And then there's this other mysterious capacity we have, which is awareness, mindfulness. And in this moment, I invite you, please become aware that you're seeing. You notice that? How the hell did you do that? Or please become aware of the sensations in the index finger of your left hand. How do you do that? It just does, doesn't it? It just is. And what's the location? Let's say, let's do this. Mm, Please conjure up an image of your kitchen sink at home. Where does that image occur? Well, these days people say, well, in the brain, but that's an idea. Where does it occur experientially? It's non-local. It just occurs. So the Buddha, this was part of his vast, astounding discovery. The Buddha discovered that concentration and mindfulness are both cultivable. We can grow them. And so how's that particularly useful in the realm of emotions? If an emotion arises, and they do, right? Emotions are part of what keeps us, part of us as human beings. And for instance, rage is there because it saved us. Because in a few seconds, we can go from docile into being willing to kill because our babies are being attacked by the cats or whatever. Right? So that capacity to activate is really important. Similarly, desire, all the five hindrances, there's a place for all of them. They're all natural. So, however, we get to a place where we start cultivating the mind, and then there's an emotion, and we'd rather not feel it, so maybe we try to concentrate, and it's still there. What do we do then? Well, we turn toward it. A totally counterintuitive action. I'm feeling really sad. Well, what should I do? Maybe I'll let myself be sad. Where do I feel sad? Oh, it's in my throat. Or I'm angry. Where do I feel it? Well, I want to bite. And maybe, and there's this thing in my arm, I want to strike out. I did bioenergetics therapy early in my career. And so we turn toward it. We take our meditation posture, figuratively. We turn toward it, and then we allow it to reveal itself. What's there? And there's, I think Chogyam Trungpa said, meditation is one embarrassment to the ego after another. That we discover in us that we have the whole shebang in us. Those people that we judge mercilessly, those horrible people, those bad people that do that, that category of people that are worthy of hating, it's in us. We just haven't had the context for that to act out. And so the meditation becomes a practice of learning how to suppress and learning how to open into, so that we become more and more of who we really are. Is this making sense? And that's 2 of the 7 enlightenment factors. That makes 5. There's also curiosity. We get so curious, and persistence and energy and tranquility and equanimity and joy. So we can't save the world. We probably, in my IMHO, as we say, we probably can't affect what happens in the world very much at all, because it's on its gargantuan journey. But we can have a huge impact on our own lives. There's a Hindu notion of Indra's web, Indra, one of the great gods or goddesses, and that each of us is a node in Indra's web, and that I have responsibility. There's a few places where Indra's web come together in me, And I am responsible for those pieces. My relationship with my children and grandchildren and the people I get to meet here. This is my responsibility, and it's a huge responsibility. It's doable, but and what's the primary tool we have? Well, it's awareness. It's being awake. And if I'm lost in delusion, in fantasy, even if I'm lost in messianic fantasies, full disclosure, I was born on the 24th of December. I was really aiming at the 25th because I thought I could save the world, but I missed and failed. So we have here a worldview and a set of practices that actually can make a difference. That really make a difference, particularly in ourselves. And it doesn't come with becoming perfect. My goodness, I've tried. It doesn't, we don't get to be perfect. We don't get to put all those reactivities and places where we criticize ourselves. We don't get to get rid of all of those in a lifetime. But we do learn how to pause and not act out the worst of them. And we may be graced with some knowing what we really are. We may get to wake up and realize that we're not our personalities, we're not our histories. We are that which is awake. And that's where the refuge in the Buddha is the reminder. Oh, sneeze coming. My apologies. Why do we apologize for sneezing? What a weird thing. Is it going to happen? Yes. The tension's building. Maybe it won't. Somebody I knew did this. Will it take it away? The tongue? Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Well, it worked. So I guess I just want to underline the possibility that it's almost impossible to find a therapist in the United States anymore. I hear this thing on the radio, sign up here, and 24,000 therapists are waiting to get your call. Oh my God. But why is there this increase in need? Because the stress level is growing. Because the anxiety level is growing. I guess I was prompted with this to talk about this today I looked at the news and there's been another mass shooting. They're just all over the place. And they become normative and they're frightening, right? So that we're frightened and we can get lost in that and we can become more and more anxious, or we can take responsibility for our lives and become saner and calmer and more loving and much happier. That strawberry is always there in the poem, right? It's there. Is this how it is? Is this how it's always been, to exist in the face of suffering and death and still keep singing? It is. And the strawberry's always there, but we have to pause long enough to realize, yep, I'm hanging on a rope and it's a bad ending. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's a fine ending, right? Maybe maybe we might plan on a departure such that it goes more like this, which is if we have a chance to be surrounded by loved ones. Thank you for the dance. This dream has been extraordinary. And I'm glad you all played your parts just like you did. And ta-ta, I have somewhere to go. Why not? So thank you. Thank you for coming today. Coming supports each other. I shall not be here next week. I'm not sure who's teaching. Jim is. I'm doing something radical. I'm meeting my dear beloved friend Don McEachern in Victoria. He's from BC. And we taught together now there for 15 years or more. And we're taking a vacation together. We have 4 nights in an Airbnb, and we're just going to disconnect, and we'll do a bunch of sitting, no doubt. We'll always do that. But wow. So Sunday morning next, you'll be in Jim's hands, and we'll be going to maybe the Princess Hotel to have high tea. So let's close in a very simple way. I think I'm going to not do the circle today. Let's close. Let's close with this, with the dial tone of the universe, as Ram Dass put it. You remember it? It goes like this. You can feel it vibrating in your heart, your throat, and the crown. And we'll do it for a minute or so, and then I'll ring a bell to close. You ready? And don't wait for me. May all beings everywhere benefit from the merits of our practice. Please have a fine, mindful day and a couple of weeks till I see you again, and happy trails. Thanks for coming. What's that? Oh, stay for tea, coffee, cookies. I saw actually there were nachos. No, not nachos. Anyway, there's potato chips.